Hello again everybody, hope you're all doing well. So it's the end of the day, I'm just about to finish up in the garage, but I thought I would do a quick video just because the scooter that I've got in at the minute has a issue which I've come across several times already. So it's a fairly common issue which you may have come across yourselves, and this video may or may not be useful to you. And the issue is regarding difficult starting. This is on a Chinese scooter. So a little bit of background, the customer bought the scooter in, basically he said if he gets it running and rides it and then leaves it overnight, the next day it will start just fine. But if he leaves it for a couple of days and then tries to start it, it takes ages. Sometimes it doesn't start at all. The battery wears down and he has to just keep charging up and trying until it eventually starts. So he brought it in for me to have a look at it. Now this scooter, even as it is a Chinese scooter, he really does look after his vehicles. This scooter is 5 years old, but it looks brand new. And in fact, he doesn't actually use it that much. He probably goes out a couple of days in the summer and the good weather, and that's basically it. I mean, this thing's 5 years old and it's only done 1,500 kilometers, so nothing basically. So obviously, and especially as he hasn't been trying to fiddle with it himself or anything, it's as it was at the factory, so I wasn't expecting to find anything too crazy. Obviously I've had a looked at the condition of all the fuel lines and everything. I've taken the carburetor off and just given it a blast out, given it a clean, just to make sure there's no blockages or anything, but everything's basically fine. So the issue is actually an issue which I had with my wife's scooter as well, for the same reason. And it's to do with the position of the fuel tank, and this is specifically with the carbureted models. The fuel injected models don't have this problem for reasons I shall explain shortly, but the carbureted Chinese scooters, most of them that I know of, the fuel tank is up here somewhere, and that's great because you've obviously got the fuel tank higher than the carburetor. You've got gravity helping the fuel come down and get it into the system, and usually they also have a fuel pump as well to help just get the fuel through into the carburetor, so that's great. But on this scooter, and on this one as well actually, the fuel tank is down here, down in under the floorboards, and it is in actual fact lower than the carburetor. So obviously the fuel has to be pumped up, so it's fighting against gravity, and that means that on this scooter it relies very heavily on that fuel pump. Now here's where the issue lies. The fuel pump is vacuum operated, and of course the only time you've got a vacuum is when the engine is turning. Now under normal operation, when the engine is running under its own power, then the vacuum is obviously running and the fuel is being pumped. But when you're starting it, obviously the pump is only working when the starter motor is turning the engine over. But of course, what's happening with this particular scooter is if it's being left for a couple of days, gravity is pulling the fuel back down into the tank and effectively creating air, not air locks, but there's air in the fuel lines. So after a couple of days of it sitting, you have to get that fuel pumped back from the fuel tank back up into the carburetor. And obviously what's happening is sometimes that's taking just a bit longer than the battery can actually keep going for, and hence obviously he has to recharge the battery and try again. So the solution for this is fairly simple, and there's several ways you can do it. So you're not going to be able to see too well. I'll grab the torch, but basically if we come down here, so let me see if I can get up in here, and I don't know how well you're going to see this because I'm going to go ahead and sort of say you're not going to be able to see it. Kind of. Right, so on the top right of the screen now, you can see what you're looking at is actually a section of the hose going from the airbox to the carburetor. So this is the section that's basically almost at the carburetor. And you can see there's a little bit sticking out. Now this is usually blanked off, it's usually just got a plug in it, but because it's a direct access point into the mouth of the carburetor effectively, what we've done with this particular scooter, what he's done, is just to add a bit of a pipe to it with well, at the minute he's just got a screw in there, so that what he can effectively do is spray a little bit of fuel into the mouth of the carburetor to get the engine started, to get that vacuum going properly, to pump the fuel from the fuel tank up. Because, as I say, once the engine starts, obviously you've got a good strong vacuum, and the pump's pumping fuel from the fuel tank and filling up the carburetor, and it'll carry on running. It's just that initial getting it running in the first place. So he's just got this little pipe here, and he can spray a bit of starting fluid or a bit of petrol or something in there and just get it running. Now this works incredibly well, works perfectly, but it's not necessarily ideal. Probably the best thing to do is, if you've ever seen on like lawnmowers and stuff, they have those like manual primers. So like the best permanent solution would be to rig up one of those primers, so you can effectively prime it to get a bit of fuel into the mouth of the carburetor to start it, to then get that vacuum thing going. But that's the issue, and that is a solution. It's a bit unfortunate that it has that issue in the first place, but as I say, it's just by nature of the design, by nature of the fact the pump relies on vacuum from the engine turning in order to get the fuel up there. Now, obviously, I said a minute ago that fuel-injected versions don't have this problem, and that's simply because the fuel-injected bikes, they have electronic fuel pumps. So you'll notice when you start the engine, you have that sort of electric buzzing noise. That's the fuel pump priming. So obviously, it's a non-issue with the fuel-injected models, but most Chinese scooters certainly are still carbureted. So if you happen to have a Chinese scooter, and like this one, you happen to have the fuel tank in a position where it's lower than the carburetor, and like with this one, you have issues starting it after it's been sitting for a little while, that's pretty much why. So there you go, guys. I'm actually going to be taking this bike out on a ride. I'll do a video of it, actually, because the customer has asked if I can, for the next couple of days, just take it on some little rides and make sure it is working fine. He said something about sometimes when you ride it for a while and then stop, there's a little bit of fuel leaking out of the overflow of the carburetor. There shouldn't be, because the carburetor, as I say, I've had it apart. It was clean anyway, but I cleaned it again, and it has no issues that I can see. It all looks nice and shiny and lovely. But we'll do as the customer says. We'll take it for a little ride tomorrow and the next few days, and just make sure there's no other issues, because I think he's planning on selling this now. He's had several issues with it in the past, and I think he's getting a little bit fed up with it, which is fair enough. So he just wants to make sure it's in good working order now, so he can get it gone and maybe look at getting something a little bit more reliable or whatever. So there you go. So as always, guys, I hope you enjoyed this little video. If you did, please do give it a like. Go and check out my other videos. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And for now, I'll catch you again soon.